Good morning. As we gather together, get another week on the way. There's a lot going on. Obviously, Monday was Memorial Day, and so we're Tuesday, Wednesday, just a day behind in getting the running going. School's ending. Most of our college students are home. Some are staying where they go to college to work. But exciting times here at Faith Baptist Church. A lot of great young people, and I'm really honored to have the kind of young people we have. When I was 30 to 35, I had a great crowd of young people in Bible college, but I was young, and young people love youth, and anyway, it was exciting having all those young people busy for God. Coming home during summers, and almost every summer I'd have several young people working with me, some most of the time for no pay. They just volunteered as just to learn. And those are great days. But as the decades pass, seeing these young people here and seeing their enthusiasm, we are so blessed. Oh, you that don't go to our church, you don't realize, but to have buildings filled where half the crowd is under 30, and our children don't go to church in the morning. There's no room for children. A lot of the teens don't go to church in the morning. There's a teen church. It's just they're just not a space, and we're waiting on one of you to write the check to get us a new building. But God knows He'll do that in His own time, or He'll lead someone to do it. He uses people. But here we sit, school, our high school, elementary school ending, college students are all done with school and looking at summer plans. We just have a great opportunity. Camps, vacation Bible school, and conferences, and hopefully you that are family people take a vacation, take your family somewhere. We're going to have a Monday through Friday. We're going to disappear with two of our kids, maybe three of our kids, and we're going to go spend a few days, not long, but a few days together, and then maybe later in the summer, Mrs. Goddard and I might take some time off, just us, and go somewhere. We'll see how busy the summer gets. But God has been good, and I appreciate some of you. You've sent notes of that you're praying, wondering how my knee's doing, and I just think we're in a great day technologically that they can chop off a chunk of your knee and put a bolt down in it with a top on it and a cushion there, a plastic cushion, and fix whatever titanium, chromium, something or other on the top, and that knee's great. My other knee now needs to be done now, and I'm not real anxious to do it. I would do it. I don't mind the surgery. It's me operating at 20 to 30 or 40% for a couple of months. I just feel so inadequate, not able to do my job. So if I do the other knee, I've got to find a time when I can honestly not look at 3 weeks, but 3 months when I can operate at half speed or whatever. But anyway, I'm doing great, and things are very good here at church. I'm very thankful. And God has provided financially as well as otherwise. And we don't have any extra. We'll be under budget, and then someone will put in an extra large gift, and it'll even things up. Beautiful roof done on our Sunday school building. And thank God for the people who did that and that were responsible for paying for that. And there was some pretty serious giving on that, and they said we don't want to be known, don't recognize or anything, but God recognizes. But things have been good, and thank you for the great Memorial Day weekend, all that went on, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm grateful for our military, grateful for a country that still tries to acknowledge. I don't know how corrupt they are in Washington, but the common military guy, he's still the hero, and they're the ones that we appreciate. I want to mention today a couple of ladies. And these are out of Mike Ray's book, If They Can Make It, You Can Too. But I want to point out two ladies here, just a couple of quick statements about these gals. First, Harriet Tubman, and most of you know her. She was involved in the Underground Railroad and helping with slavery so much. She escaped from slavery herself, 1849, and she helped hundreds of other slaves escape. During the Civil War, she was a spy for the North, for their armies. She, in one raid alone, she was a part of, assisted in freeing 750 slaves during this time in the South. The South had a $40,000 bounty for her capture. Can you imagine, 1860, in that time period, a $40,000 bounty. That is huge. And this gal was making an impact with her life. And what a miracle. She never learned to read or write, but she knew Bible. And she said her favorite Bible verse was Exodus 15:1. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song to the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. She passed away at age 92. Harriet Tubman. Now that just to me is a great story. Now God raised up a unique personality, a unique spirit, someone willing to dare, willing to step out and do what most would have said was impossible. And that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit this morning. And then jumping over to another lady, Catherine Booth. Now, William Booth started the Foundation Army. Catherine Booth, born in 1829, sickly child all her life. Her father was an alcoholic. She was educated at home. By the time she was 12 years old, she'd read her Bible all the way through. She received assurance of her salvation at 16. She was a soft-spoken preacher. And now these men, it's the Salvation Army. Women and men preached on the streets. They didn't care. And, well, right or wrong, I don't think a lady ought to pastor. And I don't think a lady ought to be preaching in the men's Sunday school. The Bible, Timothy says a woman ought not to teach nor to usurp authority over a man. But, if you could witness to one person on the street, why can't you witness to 50 on the street? But she was a very humble, gracious lady. But it says that she carried such authority in her words because she knew the scriptures so well. She had constant pain throughout her whole life because of spinal curvature that later caused her cancer. She was the mother of 8. Was so involved in the founding work of the Salvation Army, they called her the mother of the Salvation Army. What a wonderful, wonderful lady, Catherine Booth and Harriet Tubman. And I'll probably talk about a couple of other ladies as well in the future. There's a couple of more, but Catherine Booth, an unusual lady. She just wasn't a normal lady for early 1800s. She had something special. Her health didn't stop her. The battles of life didn't stop her. She had a goal, and she and her husband served God and preached the gospel and helped people by the thousands, probably hundreds of thousands. And looking at these two ladies who stepped up and did the unusual, got out of the normal rut. Normal means you don't do too much more, too much less than anybody else. You're just like everybody. You're like in the middle of everybody. These ladies were spectacular. Now, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of amazing ladies in the Bible, a lot of amazing men. But what I wanted to mention today is the sovereignty of God. Now, we are not Calvinists. We don't believe God ordains this. You go to the church nursery, that baby's going to heaven, that baby's going to hell, that baby's going to heaven, that baby's going to hell. We don't believe God does that. We believe in free will. We believe Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. And Jesus most certainly was lifted up on the cross in Calvary, and he draws all men to him. Psalms 19 and Romans chapter 1 says that creation declares the glory of God. Now, the creation doesn't declare the cross and the death of the birth, perfect life, the sinless life, and the death and resurrection of Jesus. But all of creation cries out that there is a creator, there's a God, and people, if they will respond, God will get the gospel to them. And so we've got a culture that is, in regards to the sovereignty of God, the Calvinists believe that God ordains everything. Who'll get saved, who won't, who's going to have a toothache, who's not. And you start asking questions. If they're a true Calvinist, pretty soon they're talking pretty stupid. You stub your toe on a crack. Now, did God ordain that? Or did you just not pick up your big feet? And I've got big feet, and my feet are bigger on stairs than a lot of people's feet, and I can trip going up or down stairs. Oh, did God ordain me to trip? No, I just was not careful. So we live in a world where God has given us free will. But in that world where God's given us free will, God calls some people. God ordains some people. Remember Gideon? Gideon's up there threshing wheat, hiding behind the wine press, threshing little wheat to feed his family. And the angel of the Lord shows up and says, "Hail, thou mighty man of valor." And Gideon says, "Really? You think so?" And Gideon had some serious doubts about that. I'm reading here in Jeremiah chapter 1, and it says, Then came the word of the Lord to me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. And so, before Jeremiah was conceived, before he was born, God ordained him to be a preacher. And so, in this wonderful story, God reaches into the heart of this little child that was conceived and not yet born and says, That child is going to speak for me. And that child, and Jeremiah had a rough ministry, maybe as rough as anybody in the Bible, sort of Jesus or Job. But he had a ministry without much of the joys and the fruit that a lot of us need to keep going. But God called him. God ordained him. Think of Jonah. Jonah, God said to the prophet Jonah, Hey, I need you to go preach in Nineveh and up to the northeast. And Jonah got on a boat going southwest. Said, No, I'm not going to Nineveh. I don't like the Ninevites. I don't want you to have mercy on the Ninevites. I'd just assume they all go to hell. And that's my throwing my words in his mouth. But God had a plan. And Jonah was going to go to Nineveh to the point that God put him in that whale until he turned to God in repentance. And Jonah went to Nineveh and preached and didn't have a good attitude about it either. But there are times like that when God ordains somebody. Josiah, the king, 8 years old, took the throne. He had a horrible father. He had his grandfather Manasseh and his father, I'm blanking on right now, Ammon. Both his father and his grandfather were terrible men. And yet here he is, this boy at 8 years old, he became king, and he was going to be a good king. Not only was he going to be a good king, but he was going to bring revival to the nation at 16 years old. While kids in our country are riding skateboards, he's bringing revival to the land. He's going through cleaning up all the Baal worship, throwing out all the idols, burning statues, opening up what we would call synagogues, places of worship. And along the way, they find the Bible. He was doing all this without the Word of God. He just knew in his heart what was right. Maybe some maids, some handmaids, some nurses taught him who knows what. They find the Bible. His heart breaks for the sins of his people, and God brings mercy on the nation. That was ordained of God. God had a plan for Josiah to bring revival to the nation. God had a plan for Harriet Tubman. God had a plan for Catherine Booth. And there's so many stories like this. Of course, Jesus, for this cause, I've come to lay down my life for the people. And Jesus had a purpose. And in regard to this sovereign plan, sovereign purpose of God, with kids out of college, high school kids graduating, teenagers moving up, I just want to remind all of us that God has a plan. Now, I don't think God had a plan of me having a bad knee and needing knee replacement. I think that was the work of basketball coaches who got me diving for the ball on a hard floor, no knee pads. Nobody wore knee pads back in those days. And but the plan of God, that God has a plan for people. I could no more sit and do books and look at spreadsheets all day on a computer screen than I could. I could go compete in the Olympics as a 68-year-old man. There's just no way. I was not made to be a bookkeeper, and I don't have anything against bookkeepers. I thank God for them. We need people to keep things in order. I'm hoping somebody will keep the books on the Congress and Washington, D.C. But understand, God's got a plan. My first, I think it was my second grade teacher, told my parents, that boy will either be a preacher or he'll be a politician because he never shuts up. Now, I'm not sure that's the criteria, but it's funny she said that. And I remember my mom telling me that as a little boy, second grade, but 7, 8 years old. I remember these one-liners that came into my life. God has a plan. He ordains things. And God has a plan. And one of your children might be the athlete that is going to climb through jungles and carry people down waterfalls to get them to the gospel. And maybe you've got a child who's going to be a great construction worker, and that's their skill set. And they may have a sibling who's a musician. And I'm talking about great Christians here. But you can, you're a musician, so they run the church orchestra. Somebody else is very quiet and reserved, your daughter, your son, but they're very detailed, and they're good at taking care of every single detail. And they're going to be the bookkeeper for a mission agency with millions of dollars going around the world. Or maybe they'll work in a secular place, be the accountant for the county of Riverside or whatever, and then be a Sunday school teacher in their local church. But the point is this: there is a sovereign God, and we need to relax a little bit. That child is just what God made them to be. That handicapped child is just what God designed. And I don't know all the purposes of God, but I know this: God has a purpose. And there are no accidents with God. He does all things well. And down at the hospital with this little dear young lady in our church, Brooklyn, and just visiting with the family and checking. She had major reconstructive surgery on Friday, and on Thursday, and all of the things that we worry about, this or whatever, and I know you moms, you worry your child gets your cancer, and you begin wondering, I wonder if I fed them good enough. Wonder if they should have had more carrots. And there's a God in heaven, and trust Him. I want to encourage you, trust Him. You maybe didn't get saved till you were 70 years old. I remember an old man. He's in heaven now, but he's an old guy, and Ralph Cullors. And what a great guy. Little man, but just rock solid, strong, and a great spirit, and a deep old gravelly voice. And he didn't get saved till late in life. But you know what? He loved God, and he served God. And I think he finished his course well. A lot of preachers never did that. And when he got saved, he gave his life to Jesus Christ. And Ralph Cullors lived for God. And I believe he stepped into heaven to hear a well done, thou good and faithful servant. We don't need to fret over those things. Some people, they worry about, my past. I think your past is all under the blood. That's what the Bible says. And so don't you worry about your past. Worry about living for God today. And God's got a plan. And one of our dear ladies, young lady, she came to me one day and she said, I'm just broken because I'm the only one in my family that's saved and going to church. And maybe one by one they got saved, but the rest of them aren't in church faithfully. And she says, I'm the only one. And I told her the passage in the prophet, I want to say it's Amos, but one of the minor prophets, that God will take one of a city and two of a town. And God is delighted in that one from this city. And then the other in the minor prophets that he's talking about, as if a shepherd went and took a piece of a leg and an ear out of the mouth of the lion. He's the shepherd, and a lion got one of his sheep. But you know what? He's going to get what he can out of that lion's mouth. The sheep died, and he lost both. But I saved an ear and a piece of a leg. You might think, well, what's the point of that? Every little piece matters to God, and every life matters to God. And so you grew up in a home that was difficult or whatever. So you went through some hardships along the way. You know what? God cares, and God is sovereign. And God may have allowed you or me to go through some things to make our heart tender. I love that passage. He maketh my heart soft. I think Job said that. And so God brings these trials and our heart is tenderized. And it might have been you were 50, 60, 70 before you got saved. But the wonder of living for God and being able to finish your course. I think of Keith Morrow. Keith got saved one day out in his barn, and he had a shop, kind of a barn thing, and his daughter Candy Miller goes to our church, and we had met Candy and her boys first, and they got saved. I got to lead them to Christ, and then the husband got saved. I got to lead him to Christ, and then after a while, I was able to lead the grandpa to Christ, and grandpa and grandma and everybody now going to church together, 3 generations, and he didn't get saved till he was older. He already had a heart attack. In fact, the grandson said to him one day, they were walking together, he said, Grandpa, you need to get saved before you have another heart attack and die and go to hell. And only a grandson could say that, or a granddaughter, grandchild. And he got saved. He called me, He said, can you come over and talk? And I came over. He told me that story, and I led him to Christ there and baptized him in his own hot tub. And we had gathered people around from the church. But the point is this, There's a plan of God. There's a sovereign God. There's a God. God is not surprised at these circumstances. Now, God is not always pleased with the circumstances. Maybe God would have wished for, but God gives us free will, and so I think God would have been pleased had my parents, had there not been a liquor problem and my dad not ended up leaving. I think it would have pleased God that my dad was sober and abstained from alcohol and he stayed in our home. I think that would have pleased God. But God has a bigger plan than just, cute little feeling good about things. And it might have been maybe I would never been a preacher had there not been a broken home. And then my stepdad became the dearest of friends to me and loved him. And he and my mom moved down to go to our church and oversaw some of the ministries here. God knows. God is a sovereign God. And here with Jeremiah, before he was even born, God called him. And you go back to Gideon, he's a young man, has a family, trying to figure out what to do. And God called him. God says, I've got a great plan for you. God called Saul, the king, who later became a mess. God said to Saul, because when you were little in your own eyes, I chose you, but now you're a big shot and you don't have any humility, and I'm tossing you out. And I'm bringing in a man who's got a heart for me, a man after my own heart. So the point of all this, thinking of Harriet Tubman, what a miracle. What a miracle, this lady. And what a miracle, Catherine Booth. And there are so many people that God brings out here and God brings here, and this person has got this burden, and this person's got a handicap. They go on for God. I think many years ago of Tim Lee. I have no idea where he is today, but 35 years ago, we went to hear him preach. He was a Marine that lost his legs, and he was saved, but he was away from God. And very good testimony. He's a young man and lost his legs, and he said, I woke up and he's in the arms of this other Marine, and this other Marine that was a Christian is crying. And he said, looking at these tear-filled eyes, and I decided to get right with God. He's out of the Marine Corps, became a preacher, and preached, as far as I know, the rest of his life. Was it God's plan that he lose his legs? I don't know. It was God's plan he became a preacher. Maybe those legs were necessary to get to preach. I have no idea. But I know this, there is a sovereign God, and you can trust God with your circumstances. This bitterness, life isn't fair, this I'm mad at God, you're crazy. You are crazy to be mad at the one who put the sun in the sky and the stars in the space, to be mad at him, the one who holds your heart beating in his hand and your breath in his hand. He can stop your heart, stop your breath, flip your brain backwards so you fall over on your head every time you try to stand up. He's God, and it's crazy. Trust him. Trust him. And, you might say, well, some of my children aren't living for God, and only one of them is. Well, could we rejoice in the one that is and know that God has a plan? I don't know what God's plan is. I just know this. There's a sovereign God. He has a plan, and I am so grateful that God allows me to be a part of his plan. Why were we in a tent for 9.5 years? Why was it that 3 men out of my church that I basically reached and put into the ministry, or put them back in the ministry, 3 of them had beautiful church buildings in their churches before I had a building? Well, it's just none of my business. That's God. He's sovereign. He has a plan. And so I know a fellow I went to school with. I came here to start a church again, 9.5 years in a tent, 3 different pieces of property, and frustration and pull my hair out and all that. And this guy went to start a church. He's knocking on doors, hadn't even started the church yet. Someone said, where are you going to meet? And I don't know the whole story, but they didn't have a place to meet. And he said, well, I got the keys to the church downtown. No one's using it. And he gave him the keys, said, here, it's yours. So he had a church and organ and hymnals and pews and the whole building for the opening day of his church. He didn't even have to pay for it. Well, where's God in that? Where is a just God? Well, I'm here 5 years in a rented building, then 9 years in a tent, because God has a plan, and God is sovereign, and God knows best, and we can trust him. We can trust him. And maybe you've been abandoned. Maybe your spouse left or just went to heaven early. You can trust him. God has a great plan. And I'm not saying all his plans are fun, hip, hip, hooray, but they're all good. And they said of Jesus, he doeth all things well. And I want to encourage you. There is a sovereign God, and maybe God would choose one of your kids or one of my kids to go do the spectacular, to go do the I can't believe it. Wouldn't that be great? But I'd love that all my children just love God. I just want my kids to honor God. I want them to love God. I'd love to have my grandkids all saved and to love God. And then let God sort them out. This one will be a Christian contractor, and this one will be a Christian garbage collector, and this one will be a missionary, and this one will be marry a Christian school teacher. This one will marry a businessman. It's all right. He's God. Let's trust him. Let's trust him because he is worthy. I can just encourage you, rest in the hands of a loving God.